This is Dr. Charles Parker, and you're listening to Core Brain Journal. It's a place where I connect both fresh discoveries and interesting different perspectives from advanced mind science with the realities of real people and everyday life down on Main Street. Well, welcome, folks. This is Dr. Charles Parker one more time at Core Brain Journal, and we have a very distinguished guest, Dr. George Lindenfeld, today. He is a mind science expert. Welcome, George. We're looking forward to talking to you.
Thanks, Jack.
So, George is an expert on PTSD. Depends on who you're talking to. It could be PTSD, PTS, all kinds. There's a big debate going on about how we approach this. What Dr. Lindenfeld does for us is he's going to bring it right down to where the rubber meets the road. He has written 3 books. One is on what was the phrase? The PTSD symptoms reverse, sorry about that, permanently. And then the second one he wrote, which is going to be linked to what we're talking about, is Brain on Fire, a therapist's guide to extinguishing the flames of PTSD. And he is writing, get this folks, a 3rd book, PTSD Comorbid Conditions. Isn't that going to be interesting? Addiction, chronic pain, complex PTSD, dementia, depression, survivor's guilt, etc. You may not have room on the cover for that title. You covered the area on that. Go ahead, George. What were you going to say?
Actually, I've got a total of 8 of them, so I've added some more, such as sleep disorder. Big one.
Good for you. Well, tell us a little bit, with that introduction, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, bring a little of your personal life into it so we can get to know who we're talking to, please.
Certainly. I'm 76. I retired about 2 years ago, but I really didn't retire. My wife would like to see me in a rocking chair, but that's not my thing. So because I have time, I've been able to really get into what I think is my mission in life. And just a little bit of background. I'm going to take you way back. As a youngster, my grandfather came from Austria-Hungary, had a very, very heavy accent. I'd go up to him and, "Hey, Grandpa, tell me about your family." And his face would turn ashen. He'd turn away from me and he'd walk away. And, I couldn't figure it out, just a kid. I've come to understand that Grandpa had PTSD. Mm-hmm. All of his family, I guess, visited Auschwitz and never came out. Mm. So he had multiple traumas in his life. And I think that's what has led me to my mission, my purpose, and that is to find a way to flip the switch and get people back to who they are. Mm-hmm. Well, that is a noble, when you have something happen like that, when somebody you love is there and is still mixed up about something that happened their entire life. You see it, you're living it with them. Oh, yeah. And that's going on all the time. We see it happen so often in our practice as well. So when you first started down that path, where did you actually go to investigate, and what turned you precisely down the path of PTSD? That was a start, but where was there an influential person? Was there a specific additional experience that turned you around? Well, I got into biofeedback neurofeedback quite early when it started to come out. I got into it, then I got out of it. I didn't like sitting there with a pad having to write all the numbers down. And then the computers came out and started capturing it. A buddy of mine named Tom Allen was able to put it all together. He went to Europe and found some guys that hadn't been told that you can't do this, and they did it. They put peripheral temperature and EEG and sweat gland activity all into one little box, and that got me excited again. So I did biofeedback neurofeedback for many, many years. Candidly, Chuck, I got burnt out of it. Watching Pac-Man for so many years just gets to you, you know? Yeah. But truly, I started envisioning and dreaming, there's got to be a way to directly connect with the brain and do something about this trauma stuff, because it doesn't go away and people are killing themselves every day. The facts now are 20 a day. We used to think it was 22, but no, it's 20. They did some hard statistics at the VA, and
Yes.
that's the number.
Yes, it is.
And every day, and they're the young ones coming back from service, and the females used to be the old dudes like me. Mm-hmm. I served in the Navy Seabees, so that's another reason for my commitment to and attraction to helping our vets. So at any rate, I was into biofeedback neurofeedback, and about 5 years ago, my daughter, Dr. Catherine Billiot, she's in Ormond Beach, also a psychologist, introduced me to this device called the BAUD, B-A-U-D. It's a bioacoustical utilization device. I took to it like a fish to water, and that's been where I've at ever since.
Well, let's take a moment to talk about that device. If it changed your life, let's understand what that BAUD is. I've never heard of it.
Well, I'm going to make it as simple as I can, so I'm going to give you a little background science if we can. First of all, if we think of this trauma, and I'll avoid the word PTSD for a moment, if we think of what trauma does to living beings, it, if you will, flips a switch to try to help that being, whether it be a single cell or something complex like us, from getting in harm's way again. The problem is, in the evolutionary sense of things, there's not a mechanism to flip that switch off. Mm-hmm. So with trauma, we end up in a chronic state of fight, flight, or freeze. Mm-hmm. It affects the neuronal circuitry of our brain. Mm-hmm. If you went up to the light switch and said, turn off, it's not going to turn off. Now, Chuck, that's what I think of talk therapy. So I'm making a linkage. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Some of your listeners are going to maybe be upset, but talk therapy doesn't alter trauma. And some of the gold standard treatments that are going on, prolonged exposure therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, mega studies are saying they ain't doing what they're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you want to jump on that, but
I don't know enough about it to tell you the truth about those studies, but we've experienced it. We do the place that we've taken brain practice here is we do neurofeedback, we do EMDR, and honestly, this Core Brain Journal is introduced to us to a number of individuals. Over at episode 046 was Alex Domain, and 061 is Dave Seaver up in Canada. A lot of these folks have different types of tools. That's why I was particularly interested in talking to you and your view of how this tool actually can go in and change a person's life, because I think this isn't part of ordinary conversation, and we need to make it part of that conversation.
I'm aboard. Let's take it a step further. So trauma alters the circuitry in the brain at a neuronal level, and some propose at a genetic level. So the 9/11 folks can pass it on for 2, 3, 4, 5, God knows how many generations through an alteration of the gene, through the trauma effect. But now, the next step, each time that target, I'll call it, is brought up in that memory circuit, it is restored. This is the work of Dr. Joseph Ledoux. It's called consolidation and then reconsolidation of memory. Each time that happens, whether it be intentfully or unintentfully, such as a car backfiring, fireworks going up, meat on the grill for some, the brain restores that vivid memory over and over and over again. Now, if we can find a way to intervene during that restoration, we can change it. And in fact, that's what this special binaural sound does. It drops the emotional component of the trauma, and you know, some of your folks are going to go, "Oh, who is this guy? What's he talking about?" I've seen it drop in 5 minutes. 5 minutes, freeing the person of their PTSD. They go to sleep like a baby. They're no longer the nasty, whatever folks call them. They become human beings again. So we're literally altering a circuit back to its pre-trauma state. And please ask me stuff, because I know this sounds way out, but I've done it well over 100 times. I just got approval for a 36 combat veteran study through a human research committee, and I'm out there pounding the pavement for funds and for veteran volunteers, so I'm really into this stuff.
So we'll give them the website. If we have a veteran volunteer, they can get in touch with you, because, and it would be great. I mean, I know from having done SPECT imaging that people were happy to jump in a machine because they'd like to see what's going on with their brain, but this is a different thing. This is an exploration. You actually want to get in there and do some significant treatment, evaluation and treatment with your, and it's, the term is neuromodulation sound. Is that correct? Tell us a little bit about it.
Neuromodulation or binaural sound. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Please.
By the way, the study at this point is targeted for Sarasota, Florida. Although there's a chance we may be doing it in 3 different locations. One is Asheville, North Carolina. The other is Scranton, Pennsylvania. So it may be a 3-state project with 12 veterans in each cohort. We'll see what comes out of that.
Okay.
All right. So, any rate, if you think about that target / trauma, it has a frequency. It's in waves. And if we can adjust a sound to resonate with that frequency, we can alter what's happening in the way the target is being restored. It's simple, but it's very, very complex. So we have the trauma. I have the person lighted up inside, and I talk in sensory language. I do not use the word think. I do not use the word feel. And I train therapists that are doing this to drop that out of their vocabulary. You can't believe how hard that is, Chuck, to accomplish. We are ingrained with those words from our first day of training. Unbelievable.
This is the reason we're doing Core Brain George, I'm telling you, because we have to change the language to move forward. And so, so stay with that. So you see, you lit them up inside. Could you elaborate on that a little bit further, please?
Well, light up. Okay. I want them to light up the limbic system.
Oh, I got
now,
you. Okay.
I don't know if I can talk bad language here, but
yeah, please do.
Hey, I asked one of my veterans, what is it like inside when that? And he said it's like having a pissed off cobra ready to bite your head off.
Oh my gosh!
How vivid is that?
That's a picture.
But that's what we're dealing with when PTSD is lit up. So I'll ask them to light up that cobra. I want them to do it through their senses, through their visual sense, through their olfactory sense, through their kinesthetic sense. I ask them to be there as though it's happening right before them, because that's what I want to tune into to have my sound resonate with that target. The premise I give them is that I know you don't want to do this, and I don't want you to trust me. I want you to be very, very skeptical, but I assure you if we tune this in correctly, you will only do it one more time. And that proves to be true over and over and over and over again.
So, George, how do you do that? So you got them on the machine and you're reading some oscillations on the machine?
There is no machine.
Oh, okay.
There is a headphone.
Okay.
And there's a little box that generates sound, The lower dials are volume, and they set them themselves with eyes closed, so they're not looking at numbers. And up top, there are 2 frequency dials. The first one is set to resonate with that target. I do that. So I'm adjusting the dial. They're in the target. The cobra's flaming. As I adjust the dial, I ask them to wave when they sense it's connecting, it's resonating. And typically they'll experience that in the body. The body will start to sweat, the heart rate will start to zoom up. I mean, most people can identify it the first time around with a 0 to 6 settings. I then back it down to establish the proper setting again, because you see there are different neural networks that are related to different things. For example, there is a pain network, there is a depression network, there is a trauma network. Mm-hmm. And so we want to zoom in on that particular event that we'd like to alleviate. All right, so they get it, and they're sweating, and they're waving, and they say, I'm there, oh my God. I have them take the headphones off, and I say, now, this is the one that's really important, because this is the dial that disrupts that and frees you from it. What happens, Chuck, is that we end up with 2 different sounds, one in each ear. The brain only hears it as one sound. Now, with the second dial, called the disruptor knob, when that's set appropriately, the patient begins to sense a fading of the imagery, a lightening of the body reaction. The heartbeat starts to normalize, okay? That's the setting. I'll tell them, let's let it run for 5 minutes and see what happens. Let's see what you get out of it. I'm recording those settings, and I'm labeling it trauma setting. As I told you before, after 5 minutes, the person is telling me, I can't get it anymore. I can't bring it up. Oh, come on, close your eyes, try. And when this is done properly and successfully, the emotional kick is gone. They can remember what happened. In fact, they can remember it even better. So later I'm going to talk to you about the neuronal network of PTSD. And if I forget, please bring it up, because I'm an old man.
I'm writing it down right now. So then,
what they asked me about with that.
Well, let's stay with that picture right there with that guy. So then he takes off the headset or whatever, and he backs off. Then does he come back for a second session, or how many times does he have to do this? Is it an ongoing situation? What happens in that regard?
Well, let's set the preface that this is a non-complex case of PTSD. Maybe it's a singular encapsulated event that happened. You know, my buddy got killed right next to me. I don't know how I lived, but he didn't. Those can clear up very, very quickly. With complex cases, it's like peeling off the layers of the onion. By complex, I mean they've had childhood abuse. They've had a multiplicity of different traumas throughout their life. Somehow or other, this is jingled up here on my screen, but let's keep talking.
That's my fault, because I hit that doggone button on the.
Yeah, you had to screw it up, huh?
It's my fault.
All right, so we've got the, let's say, veteran. We've tuned into the frequency.
Yeah.
I'm going to send him home at that point. I'll ask him what happened. I'll get a little more detail. Now, before this, mind you, if I had my preference, I don't want to know what happened in that trauma. Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to catch the cobra's poison. Mm-hmm. You can catch secondary PTSD by dealing with trauma patients day after day after day.
That's interesting.
In fact, the family is probably infected and needs to be de-infected as well. This is why they kicked that veteran out. We can't live with you anymore. Get out of here. Go. That's why so many are on the street.
Wow, that is a very, very provocative observation. I haven't heard that before. Secondary infection.
Oh, yeah. This has happened through 9/11 with the telephone dispatchers. They got PTSD, hearing all that stuff, hearing people they're sending out to die, literally, and then having to live with it. All right, one other cogent comment, and that is you need to establish a trust relationship before you engage in therapy with your patient, to which I say BS. The veterans I treat have seen so many people, have been tried on so many medications and different therapies, they don't trust anyone, not even themselves. I don't believe you need trust to do this. I believe you need some wish, desire to be okay again. And that's what I try to inspire. It's something called hope. Look, if you want a better life, you give this a chance. If it doesn't work, there's no surprise. If it does work, then we got a tool, buddy.
See, that is so refreshing and so optimistic. It's just unbelievable, because you're right. That is one of the, common denominators that you hear so often. If you can just go in there and get something done without necessarily establishing a profound therapeutic alliance, and they're just going to get it done.
How are you going to ally with someone that trusts no one?
Yeah.
Doesn't make any sense.
It really doesn't. I just am thinking about somebody. I don't know if have you been to the Combat Trauma Conference with Dr. Bart Billings?
No.
You would be, he's a great guy. I've interviewed him. He has the largest combat stress conference. It's out in California. And I interviewed him when you're not going to be published here for a while, but if you go into Core Brain Journal 031, you would like him, because you and he are on the same path, and he would like to know you, and you would like to know him.
Sounds good.
So back to it. So we're there and we're cooking along, but back to the thing. Does he have to come back a second time, third time? How many times do you feel like till he really gets synchronized with his internal wavelengths and desynchronized with his stuckness?
Some don't have to come back after 5 minutes of that binaural sound. I invite them back. In fact, I asked them to call me the next day because I want to know what's going on. And that's unusual because, in traditional therapy, you don't do that.
Nope.
You come to your next appointment.
Yep.
And I'll get some information in that call or email, however. And I might say, well, let's give you a little more time. Gee, you slept 8 hours last night. How long's it been since you've done that? Which leads me to another position. I'm talking about 2015, 2016 literature. Again, that's my chapter on sleep disorder. If you do not eliminate insomnia and nightmares with that patient, you have not resolved PTSD.
Fantastic.
In my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like 90% of them have insomnia. And then after they're done with treatment, about 70 to 80% still have them. How on earth can we excuse that? How can we say you've been successfully treated when one of the major symptoms continues ongoing throughout a life course? Yeah. Blows me away, Chuck.
That's a very big deal. That is a very big deal. I didn't know that. I had no idea about that symptom. I mean, we see it all the time, but I didn't know the relevance of it, and I didn't understand that it could be taken away relatively easily.
Yes, sir. Let me tell you another component of that. If you've got sleep disorder and PTSD, your need for intimacy is significantly diminished. Maybe you want to have a little of it sometime, but you don't want the hugging, and you don't want the closeness, and you don't want the cuddling. You want to be away. So it really affects one's intimate life throughout the course of the life unless this circuit is reset. Now I got some other things to tell you about our aging dudes like me. If you've had combat-related PTSD, you are twice as likely to develop a dementing disorder such as Alzheimer's than your non-combat involved colleague. Twice as much. Why? Why would that be? If you've got a sleep disorder, you're 27% more likely to develop a dementing disorder than your non-combat related buddy. What's going on here? I'm going to tell you. It's a systemic disorder, Chuck. It doesn't just affect the emotions. It's not a disorder. It's a systemic issue that permeates the entirety of the being.
You know what you're saying, honestly now, I'm an innocent with what you're talking about. You're helping me understand something I really know nothing about. So speaking as a complete innocent, it's easy to become perhaps overly enthusiastic, and maybe I need you to calm me down on this next point. But the big question is, if it's this non-complex, if it's this reasonable, then it almost should be the standard of care for returning individuals. Just like, do it.
Well, let me take it a step further. Okay, we've got the battlefield, and we've got someone that comes in, and there's a trauma that goes on, and that individual reports to the clinic. They've already got his settings before because they established them before he went out on duty. Now he comes back, they slap those headphones on. He never gets PTSD in the first place. We can apply this to first responders, policemen, firemen, ambulance. We can stop PTSD from ever happening by blocking its reconsolidation.
Man, oh man.
How's that?
That's unbelievable. So now let me ask you this, because I know I'm thinking about this, and I know a number of people in our audience are thinking about this while they're listening to what you're talking about, and that is, what's the training protocol on this? I mean, you're a PhD, you're a very bright guy, you've put this whole thing together, you've been doing it for years. You know, you can go in and twist the knobs and make it happen, but what happens down to the Virginia Beach Fire Department when they don't know anything about a baud machine or any of that sort of thing?
Well, I've trained my first, I call it cohort of healers here in the Sarasota area. They range from people that have PhDs to one had a BA, bachelor's.
Yeah.
And I wanted a range of people because I want to determine if this is something folks can learn across a broad range. Yes. And indeed, they can. I have certified those people. And it ain't easy to get certified with me. I had an actor role play a Vietnam veteran. The folks that sat with him cried. That's how real he was. I'm talking about the therapist. He would break your heart. And I'm sitting there with a checklist, Chuck, and I'm checking off how many times he is saying feel, and how many times he is saying think. And are you describing reconsolidation and reset therapy? That's the name of the treatment. Reset, R-E-S-E-T, stands for reconsolidation enhancement by stimulation of emotional triggers. That's what we're doing. We're resetting the brain circuitry.
So then what happened in that situation? I was there with him crying. What happened?
They did the job. They got certified. I'm working at getting CEUs so I can put on 1, 2, and 3 day workshops. And I want to be able to put it in a webinar format as well, because I want to get it out there.
Well, how can people get signed up for that kind of process? What's the easiest? Do you have a way to do that right now while we're talking that you can tell us?
Well, I don't have a web page yet because I'm retired and I got to be able to produce a little bit of an income. Hopefully my books will sell. But I'm training people in the Sarasota, Tampa area in general. And I do have on LinkedIn a group called Reset Therapy. So folks can keep up with what's going on with me there.
Okay, now I got another thing.
I'm going to have a webpage.
All right, you get it together. Now here's the deal, George.
will.
You've been kind enough to do a book giveaway with us, okay? And I want our listeners to know, if they're interested in this conversation, as interested as I am, they can leave their email to do a drawing on this book, which is Brain on Fire, A Therapist's Guide to Extinguishing the Flames of PTSD. George is going to give us a signed copy. He's offered a PDF of the first chapter of that book. So even if you don't win the book, you're going to get a first chapter of the book, which is going to tighten you up with George. George, they're going to leave the email with us because we do have a lead capturing device.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to send you the emails. Folks, you are listening. You do that with me. I'm going to do that for you with George, and we'll make the connection happen right out here. Definitely going to happen.
I got to clarify one thing, Chuck.
Yeah.
The book giveaway is Brain on Fire.
I'm sorry. I get that
The
squared away.
PDF is the first 9 pages of chapter 1 in the new book. It's not completed yet.
Yeah.
And that's on dementia.
Okay.
And it includes those figures I talked about combat vets getting dementia at twice the rate of non-combat. I want people to know about that. So that's the giveaway.
Okay, clarify, because I said they were both in the same book. The one is Brain on Fire is the book, and then his first chapter of his book that hasn't even been written. Folks, he's going to let you in you open the window on his newest work. I mean, that's definitely a reason to leave your email. Do it, and we'll shoot it to George. We'll get it done. And you can get now, and we're going to do everything we can offline to get George started with a mailing list. Got to do it.
It'll happen.
So let's talk about some, I think one of the things that's really always so important, George, is when things don't work as expected. You know, you're going along, you're doing the right thing, you've obviously learned a lot, you're a well-trained guy. What happens? Can you give us an example of how it didn't work, how it changed your life, how you had to reconsider what you're doing and make an improvement on what you're doing? Can you give us an example of something like that?
Now, when you say didn't work, are you talking about the treatment?
I'm talking about, I guess the treatment. I'm just thinking about where you were disappointed in what you were doing, sort of where you hit a wall and what you had to do about it. It could be the treatment. It could be in your life as you're taking this whole process forward.
Oh, you got all night?
You mean you've hit a few walls, buddy? I know the feeling.
You try to figure this out with me, Chuck.
Okay.
I've got a device that's FDA approved, just like your toaster or your warming pad to keep you cozy at night. And I've got a gold standard approved treatment. It's called prolonged exposure therapy, but I only have to do it one time. And I put the two together, and people walk away transformed. And I must tell you, the most amazing experience for me is to see the face where the 1,000-yard stare becomes human eyes with human contact. What a thrill that is. And that's what keeps me going. And I've seen it so many times. I'm a very up guy, so it's hard for me to talk about the down stuff. But running into bureaucracy, I've tried to contact the VA. I've knocked on DOD doors. I'm sending copies of my book to congressmen. I'm meeting with a Veterans Coalition on the 22nd of this month, and thank God I have a brigadier general that's on board. I need the folks that have the power to make the change understand that we can end the nightmare of PTSD. And I'm not going to stop.
All right, here's the deal. Now, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. This guy, Bart Billings, is a senior guy in the whole thing. He's at episode, if you go to corebrainjournal.com/031, he can hook you up. And he's hooked up with everybody. He is one of the thought leaders, and he agrees with you because he thinks everybody's being given too much medicine without knowing what they're doing. He's very emphatic about that. And he's very clear about it. He's a clinical psychologist who has run PTSD treatment centers in the military. This guy is a serious player, and you guys are brothers from a different mother.
It sounds like it. If you could email me that, because maybe I'll get a podcast and I can copy it off of there, but I'm not going to remember what you just told me.
I'll definitely email it. I'll do it as soon as we get done. We get it out. Because I got your email right here. I'll do it.
So we got time for me to switch to a little different focus?
Yes, please, if you would. I appreciate it.
And I've got to tell you about that network too. But first, chapter 7 in my book is entitled something like The Unseen Wound. And I'm talking to experts and specialists that are using laser light to partially restore brain functioning. And they're using intranasal units to get that light up into the brain. And I'm real excited about that, because so many of these folks come back with BTBI, that's blast-induced TBI, as well as PTSD. And I can get rid of the PTSD, but I have not had a heck of a lot of success with the traumatic brain injury part. So that's another area that's problematic.
Well, I got to tell you, the other one, you're going to be episode 062. And the gentleman I just told you a moment ago, the gentleman I just interviewed, Dave Seaver at 061, you're going to love him too. You guys, you're going to love him because he's got a whole thing on audio-visual entrainment. He does audio and visual light entrainment. It's right in the line of what you're talking about, PTSD and for traumatic brain. And he's got a very interesting presentation, which is very tight with what yours is.
Okay, I'll look at it. Although, candidly, I don't believe that the reset is an entrainment process. I think it's totally different.
No, that's
because entrainment takes time. Yeah. How can you flip a switch in 5 minutes and have a normal human being?
Well, so let's talk about that.
It ain't entrainment.
I got you. That sounds interesting. So then the next question is, what is it? How does that actually happen? Do you have any idea about the neurophysiology on that?
Yeah, I do. There's a guy named Dr. Charles, maybe I'm getting his name wrong, but the last name is Lipton. Has done a lot of research on what happens to the cell, the mitochondria, all that kind of stuff. And basically what he's proposing, which I endorse 100%, is that the cell has two functions. One is growth, the other is defensive protective. So when that trauma comes in, there's no more growth. It goes in, switches to defensive protective, and it'll stay there until you switch it back. That's what I think happens. Nothing to do with encoding.
That is exactly what Seaver was just talking about. And he's got a different way of measuring it. He was talking about that. Honestly, the language he was using, you're going to love it because it's very, very parallel to what you're talking about right here.
Okay.
And I don't understand fully entrainment except that, something is happening in that entrainment to do that unswitching process that you're talking about. And you are doing that. And that's one of the reasons I was asking you, because he was fresh on my mind. And I was wondering, how does it work with what you're doing? Because it sounds like you did have almost an episodic fix as opposed to a periodicity with it.
Well, let me give you an example of entrainment. And I'm not an expert in it, of course, because I haven't invested in it. But there's a well-known study from, the early 1900s, where this gentleman, his name eludes me, takes pendulums. And he's got one going in one direction and another not totally opposite, but a different direction. He comes in the next morning and the pendulums are in sync. That's an entrainment process. They resonate off each other, and the more powerful one induces the other one into repeating the pattern. But this is not what's going on with reset therapy, I will assure you.
You will like it because he has a different name for it, but he was talking about the relationship between the beta, the alpha, and the delta wave, which is coming in and messing up that whole process. He's got it actually reading on EEGs, and he actually cracks the pattern by hitting the beta and sort of cranking it up. But that's why I was asking you, because he's got it measured from an EEG perspective. But I mean,
Yeah.
it's still over my head, to be honest, George. I don't want to be dropping words like I know what I'm talking about. I just think it's...
Well, I don't even talk EEG language anymore, except when we take a look at a pre and a post of someone that's gone through this treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the book, if you're going to look at Kindle, you'll see the color version. If you're going to order it, black and white is $18, and color, they kill you. It's $50. So I found a way around that, and I've got this paper on academia.edu where I put the color pre and post of both the BrainMap EEG as well as the Loretta results.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, you can, if you want to buy it, you can go with the cheapo copy and see the color version on your computer.
Well, I'll let you say, I'm enjoyed talking. It just zipped on by here. Let me bring us down to a little bit of a conclusion. Let's hit that neural network before we go, because I'm stimulated. You asked us about. Tell us a little bit about that, and we'll have to wind up.
Neuronal network of PTSD. When a person is triggered, the prefrontal lobes shut down. They can't do complex stuff anymore.
Okay.
The speech center, Broca Wernicke's, shut down. They can't understand what you're trying to say to them, Mr. Therapist or Miss Therapist, nor can they articulate what the heck is going on inside. Mm-hmm. The amygdala, hippocampus, limbic system activates. Brodmann's 19 activates, and they get flashbacks. That's the network.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
When you turn it off, it's not hyper-aroused anymore.
And that's it. Yeah. You just turn it off. Bingo. And then what you do is you synchronize it back. So what you're doing is, but you're synchronizing it back in a certain synchronistic way. Is that what's happening?
No, I don't synchronize anything. Once it's reset, it goes back to its pre-trauma levels.
Oh.
Then I talk. Then, therapist, you can talk because they understand, they can comprehend, they can get insight. You can't get insight when that cobra wants to bite everything.
So what is the reset, George, from your point of view? I'm sorry to dig on this because, I mean, I'd like to get an idea a little bit about it, because I know my curiosity is certainly up there. What's the reset? What actually happens in the brain with that reset process?
At a cellular level, as Dr. Lipton proposes, the cells in that network, the neurons in that network, go from that protective, defensive mode back to the growth mode.
Oh,
that was
do.
their
Okay.
pre-trauma.
I got you. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
The eyes become human eyes. I want to see. I want to explore. I want to learn. I want to love. You got it.
It's totally interesting. Well, let's close with how we can get in touch with you, because this is very interesting. You don't have a website. You have a way to, do you want somebody to drop you an email? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll give you my email. It's glindy, Glindy, 123 @gmail.com. You can look up my papers on academia.edu. I got 3 of them. My third one is chronic fatigue syndrome / PTSD. Are they alike? And Chuck, they are. This lady was free 4 months of home use she purchased her own instrument, no more chronic fatigue. My next one, I want to do irritable bowel. This is not just psychological. This is medical.
Well, that's what that's one of my favorite questions. The bowel, it definitely talks back to the body. It's interesting that it might be downstream derivative. Is it derivative from brain function that's been traumatized, but it hits the bowel? Is that what's going on?
Well, I mentioned earlier that we are not programmed, well, maybe I didn't, to deal with chronic stress in an ongoing way. And I think when that happens, the switch is flipped, and the weakest point of the body, the most vulnerable point, is where the symptomatology shows itself.
Oh, I see.
If that's in the bowel, If that's in the musculature, I want to do one on a skin condition.
Yeah, on the joints.
Yeah.
George, this has been amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the time. You know, we were really, I was really looking forward to this conversation. It has been, we went on much longer than we usually do because this has just been completely interesting. And, you know, one other thing I would say is if you could send me or Tiffany an email of where I could get a link to that BOD device, so because people will want to know what that is.
Yeah, I'll send you that.
If you would send that, that'd be great. I'll put that in the show notes. And then any of the emails that we get, we'll shoot up to you. And folks, if you're interested in connecting with George, and George, be prepared. You're going to get some regular results from GLindy, GLINDY123 @gmail.com. And we're going to be tuned in with you. So when you get that list together, you can tell us you're doing a program, and we're going to show up. No question about it. Very, very interesting.
I got 2 more books after the next one I'm working on. One is the first responders, and the final one in the series is going to be the victims.
Oh my gosh. That's wild.
I got things to do, man.
This is good. Well, you're only 74. What was it? 70?
No, I'm 76.
76. You're a young guy.
I'll get them out.
Yes. Thank you for taking the time, my man. I really appreciate it.
And you too, Chuck.
Thanks for listening to Core Brain Journal. We're working every day behind the scenes to bring you reports that connect research benches with those street trenches. Here we share the complexity of mind science because, as you know, details really do matter. One of the most pervasive, misunderstood challenges is how commonplace medications, like those written for ADHD, are used so regularly without clear guidelines. If you think you'd like more specifics, take a minute to download my 2-page PDF packed with video links and references on the absolute essentials of how to start ADHD medications. They're easily available at corebrainjournal.com/start. Thanks for listening. Do connect and stay tuned. Together we can make a difference.